Ever since the rise of popularity of Unity and Godot, game engines have been very popular in game development. Game engines are very useful because they allow game developers to create games in a very fast time. Complicated tasks such as loading 3D models and tile map creation are simplified when game developers use game engines. Game engines have proven to be very useful, but the question is, do you really need to use them? Hello, my name is Codea Dev. I usually make videos talking about Codea, which is an iPad application used to make games. Today I decided to make a special video, mainly because I've been interested in the topic of game development as a whole. I wanted to answer a question if game engines are the only options that game developers could use, or if there are other tools that game devs can use to make games. I want to make this clear that I do not hate game engines. They've been very useful to many game developers, and I don't want to diminish their usefulness. What this video rather is trying to do is to make a simple evaluation, an educational video to show whether or not there are other options available for game devs to use. Most game devs believe that if you don't use a game engine, the only other option is to create an engine by yourself. Many devs believe that if you do not decide to use an engine, then you have to use OpenGL or DirectX to create your own engine, and if you do that, then you're just reinventing the wheel and just wasting time. This simply isn't true. There are other options you can use without having to rewrite every part of the wheel. OpenGL and DirectX aren't bad options, but there are other options you can use that simplify the process. I want to introduce you to game frameworks. If I'm to define game frameworks, I'll define them as a collection of organized libraries that bring in together all the features of game development, whether it be audio, graphics, and other great features that are needed to make great games. The main difference between game frameworks and game engines is that game frameworks are mainly code-focused, meaning that most of the aspects of making the game will be in the code, while game engines use other features such as an editor and a lot of stuff that are needed to make games. I see many game devs creating games using engines, which could easily be done in a game framework, mainly because game frameworks have certain advantages that game engines do not have. One of these great advantages is, since it's code-focused, everything you write, you understand. If you open up a game engine, not everything you see you would understand. Okay, now let's give an example. So suppose I'm a beginner to Unity and I open it up. The first thing I'll see is a scene editor. Well, in the middle, I don't really know how to use that. I don't know how it works. In the bottom, I'm seeing some folders. I don't really know how those works and how to use them. The left side, I see a hierarchy, and the right side, I see an inspector. I don't really know how all these features work. This is the problem of using a lot of game engines, because a lot of them have features already built in, which could be a little confusing for beginners. If I decide to use a game framework, all I have to do is import my game framework to my code editor of choice, maybe VS Code for example, and then other than that, I'm just there with a blank line of code, nothing, just no extra features, nothing else. Of course, the installation process isn't that easy for all of them, but the same applies to game engines. Some might say that you can just use the tutorial to learn how to use a game engine you want to use. That is very true, but the point I was trying to make is that game engines have features that are already built in, which might be a little confusing for beginners. Well, game frameworks have nothing, and you have to start writing code from zero all the way to the game is published. There is an advantage of using a game framework and coding from zero. The advantage is that you know how all your systems works. For example, if there's a bug in one place, I know how it works, so I can easily debug it. The same can't be said for the game engine. You might know how to write the code, but you might not know how to utilize it inside of the game engine itself. For example, in Unity, you might know how to write a component to make a bird fly, but you might not know how to add the component inside of Unity, because that itself is another skill you gotta learn. You gotta learn how Unity utilizes these components. Also, because I'm using a game framework, all the stuff I have to do is through the code. If I want to draw a sprite, all I have to do is import a module to draw the sprite, and then use the line of code to draw the sprite, and there, I got the sprite on the screen. The same can't be said for engines. For a lot of engines, what you have to do is you need to import it using the editor and then attach it to a sprite component or something like that. And basically, you write the code using script. So you got to learn how to use the editor, and you also need to learn how to code, learning two skills, which could be easily done in just one. Now, I want to say this to the people that might be angry watching this, saying that I'm just dissing on engines. No, I'm not trying to do that. What I was trying to do was just show the advantages of using a framework. But also there are disadvantages of using frameworks, which I'll talk about. One disadvantage of using frameworks and an advantage of using an engine is that when you first start making a game, all the stuff is easily done because the editor will allow you to make the game rapidly. Usually game frameworks do not have game editors, so you either have to use an external one like Tiled or create your own. Creating an editor is not too difficult because you don't need to have all the features that engines like Unity or Godot have. You can just build the features you have. But this might be a throwback for a lot of people that just want to make stuff done. I do want to say this, that even though it's a lot difficult to make a game editor inside of a framework, once you have one, the editor might be a little more streamlined than if you could use an engine, because if you make your own custom editor, you just add the features that will allow your game to be done rapidly and fast. A second disadvantage of using a framework is that some game frameworks do not have every feature that you want. For example, some game frameworks do not have networking, so you have to use an external library to do it. This is not very great for people that want everything out of the box, which engines do offer. So this might be a disadvantage for a lot of frameworks. The last disadvantage of using a game framework is a lot of stuff needs to be done by yourself, because not everyone's going to give you a tutorial for everything. You have to make systems yourself, which a lot of people, they struggle to make games by themselves. They need a tutorial, which not every game framework offers a tutorial for everything like game engines do. Despite these flaws, I still think game frameworks are great, mainly because they offer a lot of flexibility to the developer, which a lot of game engines do not give. So I still like them. Now what I'm going to do is showcase a few game frameworks you can pick from to allow you to make cool and nice games. The first game framework I'll be talking about is Love2D. In my opinion, this is probably the best framework. If you're just a beginner, this is probably the best one you can because of how easy it is to use. It's written in Lua and it's very streamlined and simple. The game Bevy was actually developed in Love2D, showing how Love2D can be used to make commercial successes. My second and favorite game framework is MonoGame. The reason I like this is because it's written in C#, meaning that it has a little more performance, and the API is actually relatively simple to use and it's pretty fun to use. The game Celeste was actually made in MonoGame, showing that MonoGame can be used to make commercial successes, and it looks beautiful too. The next game framework is SDL, and this was written in C++. It's a little more complicated compared to MonoGame and Love2D, but I do love it because it allows a lot of flexibility. The game Dwarf Fortress actually was created using SDL, showing that SDL can be used to create good games. The last few frameworks I'll just say pretty quickly. There is LibGDX, which uses Java. There's also Bevy, which uses Rust. And there's also PyGame, which uses Python. A great reason to use game frameworks is that almost all the programming language has a game framework associated to it. And if it doesn't have a specific one, you can just try using Raylib. It supports a lot of languages. If I'm to talk about myself, I personally use an app called Codea. It is a game engine / framework on the iPad, which you can use to make games. I talked about this before in the beginning of the video. The reason why I like to use Codea is because it's very easy to use since it's written in Lua, and it's also very flexible. I can carry my iPad around and code anywhere I go, and also the API it uses is very clean and it works very well for my needs. I've actually created a full game editor on this engine and it's working out very fine. If you're interested, you can check out this video on the top right. If I'm to summarize this video, I would say that this video exists to bring awareness to other tools that exist, such as frameworks. That way that game developers have more knowledge on the game development process. I was also interested in creating a video talking about lesser known game engines, and if you're interested, you can let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video. I just wanted to make this video to showcase that there are other options to create games, and you don't have to limit yourself to just a few options. You can try out extra features. And please like and subscribe. It really does help me and my channel to grow. Thank you for watching and have a good day.